Good morning once more. So in our previous class, we completed authentication. We were able to register users, log in, log out, and also retrieve authenticated users information. So today we proceed to Notes CRUD operations. We're still on Epic Notes app, where authenticated users can be able to create notes, delete their own notes, and unauthenticated users can be able to view notes. So the first thing we're going to be doing is to create DTOs for notes. Create to create note DTO, note response DTO, and note query DTO. So let's open our code editor and go. Okay. So here we are. This is alt notes. We have the notes here, note module. So let's add a directory here. Let's call this one DTO. And in here we have create note dot TTO dot TS. Okay, so we'll be creating create note DTO, where we use to create notes for users and all of those things. So we need a couple of things from class validator and a couple from Nest.js Swagger. But first of all, let's create the class, the create node DTO class first. To say export class, say create node DTO. And here is our class. So we need to know the node, we need to know the requirements to create a node. So first of all, a node we have, let's look at our schema. So Prisma schema. A node we have a title, content. Those are the things we provide. So the rest of the things will be auto-generated, like the user ID, the ID of the nodes, created that, updated that, and so on. So let's, what we need to add here, first of all, add the title, and then we add the content. But before we even add the title, we need to document this so Swagger can be able to take care of our API documentation for us. So we need this from Swagger at API property, which is coming from Nest.js Swagger. And in this decorator, we need the description, which we say note title. And we give an example. Let's say the example is let's say my important note. That's the title of the note, my important note. And the maximum length, a note can have a maximum length of 255 characters. So let's say max length, which is 255, like this. Okay. So this must also be a string. The node title must also be a string. And it must not be empty as well. So we already know about all these decorators. So it's not empty, which is coming from class validator. So we give a message. If it's empty, we validate this and we see title is required. We send back the message to the user, telling them that they need a title to create a note. So for the maximum length, we say at max length, we say 255, and we also add a message. Title is too long. So they will know that their title is too long. And finally, what are we validating? It is the title, which is of type string, and we are good to go. So we've validated our title, and we already know that we need to provide the title and the content. So moving on, we should just copy this and bring it down here. But this will be note content instead of note title. And here we'll say this is okay, let's see. This is the note content like this. And we remove this max length property. So it's a string. We remove this max length validation as well. And here you say it's the content, not the title. And we say content is required like this. Good. So this is the create node DTO. So now we've validated our node title, and we've also validated our node content. So moving on, we need another DTO, which we'll call this one update node DTO TS. I will just import create nodes from create node DTO. Say import create node DTO from source users create node DTO. And say export class update node DTO, which will be we need this partial from Nest.js Swagger. And this is all we need to do here. Okay, this is not documented. I wanted to show you what it does. Okay, so now that we've created our update node DTO, we need note response DTO as well. So see note response DTO TS. And this one will say, okay, export class, say note response DTO. This is an API property. We expose the ID at expose ID, which is a string, which is of type string. Okay, so we also need the note response. We respond with the note ID, note title, note content, user ID, when the note was created and when it was last updated. So we just copy this one. Paste it here. I'll say this one is the title. This one is the content. We'll do the same. Paste this one here and we'll say this is user ID. We'll copy it and paste it once more, and this we'll say this is when it was created at, which is of type date and not a string. Copy it and paste once more, and this one here will be updated at, which is of type date as well. Okay, so now that we have our node response DTO, we add a constructor partial. Yeah, this is what we want. Partial node response DTO. This partial. Yeah, great. Now that we have our node response DTO, we need the node query DTO as well. Node query .dto.ts. So we say export class node query DTO. We start with our API documentation at API property. See this one, the description here is search term. Let's start with the search term. Search term for, let's say search term for title and content. Search term for title and content. Required is false. It's not required. Example. Let's say example is meeting, something like that. Okay, this is, let's say search, search term. Like this. Great. For validation, we say at is optional. It's not required, it's optional. It must be a string. Must be a string. Is string actually is string. Like this. Great. Now we have the search term for node title and content. So let's add the one for pagination. So let's copy this one here. Paste it. And this one is a page number for pagination. Page number for pagination. See one. It's always a string, so we can validate. We say one, it's optional and it's number string. And here we say page and it's optional. So we also need the limits. Paste this here and we say number of items per page. Rates. And we always need 10 items per page when our notes initially loads. 10. Here's limits. And it's also a number string and it's also optional. Great. So this is what we need for our note query DTO. So moving on, we create our node service. So what we do is we say next G service, and we say node. Okay, so it has created the node service for us. And here we have it, it's an empty class. So in our node module, we need, in our node module, we need Prisma imported, and we also need the user's module imported, so we can use it in our in our notes module. We need the Prisma imports, which is a Prisma module. Great. So we have it here. We already have the node service, and let's go ahead and create next G controller nodes. So I will know we have, okay, so now we have the nodes controller automatically added to our node module. So let's go back to our node service. So in our node service, we want to be able to, first of all, we want to be able to, well, first of all, implement pagination, and we'll go ahead and implement how to get a single node. We implement how to update a node, how to remove a node. First of all, need a create node. So if we create a node, we'll be able to test and do all of these things. But we need the constructor. So we inject the Prisma. We'll inject the Prisma service. Constructor private Prisma service. Thank you, Copilot. We have this here. Okay. And now we need async. It's an asynchronous operation. Say create node, or let's just leave it as create. And we have the user ID, which is of type string. And also the create node DTO. So create node DTO like this. So since this is a method, we open curly braces, and inside of these curly braces, what we do is we say const node is equal to await, since it is asynchronous. They will say this Prisma, this Prisma node create. Okay, so we need to create, we provide the data. So let's, okay, so this is great. Thank you, Copilot. User connect user ID. So there's a method known as connect in Prisma. So we can go ahead and do something like this. We can go ahead and say, okay, create data, then we can add the user ID. TypeScript will be happy, Prisma will be happy. We can be able to do this. But since we already have the user in our database, we're not going to be creating the user ID. We're just going to be connecting the user ID to the user. We just grab the existing user, grab their ID, and then connect it to this node instead of creating the ID explicitly. We just grab it, connect it to this node. And then we say return, instead of return note, we say return new note response DTO. We'll say note like this. And TypeScript is happy. Okay, so before we even continue, we should be able to test everything one after another. We don't want to create everything before testing. So let's go back to the note controller. And here the controller says, if you go to localhost 3000/note, we access this, and then we add other sub endpoint to have /note, and then we can call our create to be able to create notes in this endpoint. So, but first of all, what we need to do is we need a constructor which will inject the node service constructor. Great. So let's inject this. Let's import node service from node service. So the first method, we also need documentation here as well. So the first thing is at API property. And we have no, API, we need the operation first. API operation. Then we need summary. Summary is create a new node. Yeah, create a new node. And we need at API property. The status is 201. The status is 201. The description on should be note. Let's say note has been successfully created. And then we say type is note response DTO, like this. So after that, if the user is not authorized, have API unauthorized response. The response will be description unauthorized, and the status will be okay, unauthorized, like this. What are we doing? We are creating, which is a post request. So we add at post decorator, we add the post decorator here. And the next thing is to create async create. And this create will take the current user. We assume the user is authenticated. So what we need is the current user. So we say at current user ID. We see user ID, which is of type string. The user is authenticated. And it requires a body to create a note. So the body now is coming from the create note DTO. So I guess this here is not imported. The body as well is not imported. Let's import the body. Okay, what's happening? Okay, at API property. API response, not property. API response. Create node DTO. Let's import this as well. Great. So now we have our endpoint for creating note. So the only thing we say is this dot node service dot create user ID create node DTO. Great. Now we can start say let's open Postman npm run start. Okay, sorry for inconvenience. Let's change this. Okay, so we had our create note route ready, and now we want to create a note. So first of all, need to authenticate. So we need to log in. So say /login, and this one here will be a post request. We need email, 20 marks, password, 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 like this. We can now go ahead and authenticate 20 marks. So let's send this. Okay, I guess I've not started. Okay, npm run start there. So our server is up and running right now. So we can go ahead and do this once more. So Tony Max is now authenticated. So we want to be able to create a note post. So I did not automate this workspace. So I'll just copy, paste. This should be notes. You need a body because it's a post request. Raw, type JSON. And here, the note we have a title. And we'll say epic note. And the content will be some CodeCamp epic notes. Some CodeCamp epic notes. Now, if you take a look at the headers, requests, we have the cookie. Okay. Now let's go ahead and send this request. Great. So if you take a look, we have the ID, this ID, we have the content, some CodeCamp epic notes, we have the user ID, which ends with 7RF4. Now, if you take a look at our user here, Tony Mark's ID ends with 7RF4. So we're able to create a note. And this note is associated to 20 marks. And if you take a look at the cookies, we have the epic note session. Great. So now because we're authenticated. Now let's go ahead and, okay, we already know that if you sign out, we won't be able to create a note. So we'll test that later. So moving on, the notes controller, let's go back to our note service. So in our node service, we add another method. And this method, we already mentioned that will be a method to retrieve notes. So we can just call this one async and call it find all. Okay, so let's start with the user ID, which is of type string. And the query, which is of type note query DTO. Note query DTO. Note query DTO. Note query DTO, yeah. So let's import this from the DTO directory. So now what we want to do is we want to, okay, use the builder. Build pagination ads. So we don't have any builder here to build any pagination ads. So first of all, we'll take care of the page, the limit, and the skip. But we already have things here. Okay, so Copilot is assisting. So we have a function here called build pagination ads. So we take the query, which is the notes query DTO. They already have the page and the limit. Okay, so first of all, we say const page is equal to number query.page, or 1. We default to 1 if it is let's bring it in here. 1. Like this. Const take is equal to number query.limit, or we default to 10. Remember what we did in our DTO, not query DTO. So we have page and we have limits. So this one here, example 10, this one example is 1. But if in case the user forgot to provide this, or let's say a developer calling this API forgot to provide that, we will default them to those values. That is 1 and 10. So it says skip is equal to page minus 1 multiplied by 10. So if the page is page 1, 1 minus 1 will be 0, and 0 multiplied by 10 will be 0. So we will take from 0 to 10. But if the page is 2, 2 minus 1 is 2 minus 1 is 1, and 1 times 10 is 10. So we skip 10 and take from the next, that would take from 11 to 20, which is the same 10 records. Great. So now we have our skip and we have our take. So now we'll be able to find many, I guess, because users can be able to get access to notes created not only by them, but by other users. So Copilot, thank you for this. And we can also do away with this user ID. Unauthenticated users can also be able to look at other users' notes. Yeah, so we have notes. Now we spread the build pagination args. So, find many can take 2 arguments. Let's say take, you see take here, we have 10. And it can also take skip. So skip is 0. So that's the reason why we're spreading this. If you spread this, it will return an object, which will spread the object, and we pass the take and the skip to the find many, Prisma find many function here. So remove this. And we have this. So TypeScript is happy and we are good to go. So note.map note, new note, response DTO. Remember, this is just an object and not an array. So we need to map, and each note should be of this structure. So that's why we are mapping. Now we're returning an array of this structured note. So we have find, or let's go back to our notes controller. And here we'll add a method of async find all. Then we'll do this. Or we'll remove user ID, notes query DTO, like this. Great. So if it's a GET request, you can come over to Postman. Let's add a new request. Come over here, copy this, and paste it here. And this time around, it's a GET request, an unauthenticated request. So we can go ahead and send. Okay, cannot get, not found. Notes. We have the note service and slash note. Okay, so here we have at gate. So try to gate note. Let's try this and see. Service code 500 internet server error. reading page. Okay, so we're getting this error because we did not provide page and skip. So let's see how we can do that. If we come over here, in our note service, we have this. This is coming from note query DTO. If you come over to our create note query DTO, here property, this is search page. Okay, so let's come over here. Query params. So let's say search. Okay. So let's even see how we can make it easier. This is optional. This is optional. Required false. Required false. So first of all, check why this error is popping up. Internet server error. Reading page. Build pagination ads. Cannot read properties of undefined reading page. So let's look at our node service. Query page. Query limit. Okay. Let's try this once more. Great. So now we have an array of notes. But you know, Tony Marks only added a single note. So we have an array of notes. So we can go ahead and the reason why we're getting that, let's talk about the error. The reason why we're getting that error because I was trying to access an undefined property on an object. So this page is not defined. So add optional chaining so that if it's not defined, it default to 1. If the limit is also not defined, it default to 10. So now we're good. So if we come over to Postman, we can add another note. Let's call this one Epic AI. We can see some CodeCamp AP AI. We can go ahead and add this note. No cookies received from, okay. So what happened? Let's log in once more. Tony Max is logged in. Send this. Great. So we have this note created. Now we can come over here and send this, and we have 2 notes. We have one Epic note, 2 Epic AI with the same user ID, which is Tony Max. Tony Max now has 2 notes, and when the notes were created, okay, so that's fine. That's great. So that endpoint is now working. You can go ahead and so let's remove this user ID. Anybody can access notes without signing in. So let's go back to notes controller, notes service, sorry. So the next endpoint for the node, okay, but we are forgetting one thing. I just noticed this. We implemented pagination, but then we forgot the query to handle the query. So we can go ahead and say, okay, const where is equal to is an object. So let's leave the user ID. They will spread. We don't need any user ID here. Anybody can access notes. So we say query dot search. If the search is provided, this is what we want to do. If the search is provided, we do this. We say or. Prisma has an or operator. Then the or takes an array. And in this array, we say, okay, the title of the note, title, whether it contains the search, contains from Prisma. Okay, let's Copilot complete this for us. Great. Like this. So this is all we need. Thank you, Copilots. I can even say the mode is sensitive. So the reason why this is because we have a note, like we have Epic AI. The AI is in capital letters and the Epic, the first letter is also capital. But we want to match this with, we don't really mind if a user provides their query in small or capital letters. So we want to be able to match that. So first of all, spread this, the take and the skip. And if there's a search, we do this and we also add it here. But if there's no search, this will be an empty object. So nothing still happens. We can come over here and send. We still have our notes. So let's go ahead. Let's say search. Let's say this is AI. So let's send. Okay, so this is not effective. So what's happening? Log not query PTO. So I'm going to go ahead and send this once more. Let's see what we've got. Undefined. The notes query DTA is undefined. Oof. This here is controller, notes query DTO. Notes query DTO. Research, optional. So let's see why we are getting undefined. Okay, object null property. Wow. Okay, it's at query. Oh, so I've forgotten what's okay. Right and last parameter is called extract the query property from the array object and populate the decorative parameter with the value of the query. Okay, so user. So the param here, okay, so I guess it's the query. So let's try this once more and see. Send internet server error. Okay, so I guess we now have something, but then in our new service, let's remove the mode. In here, remove this to make TypeScript happy. Save and try once more. Send. Great, 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 great. So we forgot to add the decorator at query, which we extract. Now, if you take a look, we have search is AI. We have the search AI in there. So then come over here. We say page 1, and we'll get, oh, is it? Let's take a look once more in our notes query detail. Okay, page 1, and we can see the limit is also 1. So you can come over here and page is 1. See limit 1. And we can leave this search to be empty. Now we send. Now if we send this, we have just single. But if we set the limit to 2 and we send, now we have our 2 nodes. But we want the limit to be always text. We are just testing it out to see what we've got. Now if we send this, we have our 2 nodes. But by the time I come here and say, okay, note and send, now we have this one with the title of notes, and the content also with notes. Great. Now I can remove this, send, and we're good to go. Okay, so now we've handled all cases for, and now we have search is empty, page is 1, limit is 10 in string form, but we're converting it to numbers. Great. So we have this, and we are good to go. So let's remove this one here. Come to our nodes controller and remove this as well. Great. And now we're still not yet done with our node service. Because if you take a look, we're just returning the notes and nothing more. So we can do better than that. Instead of doing this, we can say, okay, const notes total is equal to await promise all. So we want our query to be fast. So we want to do this in parallel. So let's do something like this. Yes, thank you, Copilot. We want to count the notes where the query matches, and we want to also return it where the query also matches. So we have build where, and we want to order. The order should be descending. Created ads should be ordered in descending form. Yes, like this. So notes and total. So we can go ahead, remove this one. And I also need the total pages. Now we say, okay, const total pages is equal to math.c total all over notes query limit. Go with the limits. Okay, so let's say const limits is okay like this. Now we can come over here and instead of saying query this, we just say limits because we've already done this up here. And let's say limits. Const state is equal to limit. Great. Now if we come over here, we now have these total pages. And now what we want to do is do the correct thing. So we'll say we'll return an object. And we'll say data is a note map this. And we can say meta, either meta or pagination. Pagination is more accurate so that we know that this is pagination. We have the total. We have the total pages. We have the current page, notes per page or one, and then we have the page size. We can even add something like has next, has previous. You can go ahead and do something like that. Has next. Total pages is greater than current page. We can see page is less than total pages. So if it's this, it has the next page. Now we can come over here and the page also, we can do it up there. You can say const page is equal to number or one. Then come over here and remove this one. Remove this. So we already have the page. We don't need to do that there. Remove the query. Remove this one. So we can leave it that way. But we can make the function pure because this function now is not pure. It's not a pure function. And it's highly discouraged. But let's just leave it this way for now. Has next, page is less than total pages. Has previous. Page is greater than one. Okay. So now we have the total pages. We have the current page, we have the page size, has next. Great, so we can come over here and try this once more. We have the data, this is what we have. Now if we scroll, we have pagination, we have total, 2. We have total pages, 1. We have current page, 1. We have page size, 10. Has next, false. Has previous, false. So you can use this to do something with it. Now if we come over here and see AI, and I send, now we have Epic AI. We have total 1, total pages 1, page size 10, current page 1, 1, and so on. But by the time we come over here and say the limit should be 1, and we send. Now if you come over here, we have the page size 1, the current page is 1, and they should be, let's remove this, send. Now we have total 2, total page is 2. Now we have has next is true because we're limiting this to 1. So every page you have just a single item. So if we click, if you have the front-end developer or on the client, there will be a button to click next, and it will load the following page. So it has the next page, but it doesn't have a previous page because we are limiting each item to 1. We have total 2 items. We have pages. We have total of 2 pages because each page is to contain a single item. If we change this back to 10, we are good to go. Now we have 1 page size 10, has next false, has previous false. Great. So now we've done the correct thing. And now all they need to provide is the limit and the page size. Every other thing is taken care of. Great. Okay, so we need another method, which is async find one, which is the note ID. Okay, thank you, Copilot. What we were doing here is here also we don't need the user ID, we only need the note ID. So say constantly goes to this Prisma note find unique, where the ID matches the note ID. But we need to check if the note really exists. So say if there's no note, we say we throw a new note found exception, note not found. If only there is a user ID, we'll do something like if note dot user ID is not equal to user ID that will be provided. That is when we'll throw this error, forbidden exception. You do not have permission to access this note. But this is not an authenticated route. We want everyone who view note to be able to see the details of the note. So that is the reason why we are doing this, and we don't need to authenticate this route. We just leave it like this. And now TypeScript is happy. So if we come over here, we add another request. And this request, let's name it get note. We name this one get all note. And this one, we will just call it add note, like that. So this get note, we'll come over here, copy this, bring it to our get note route, paste it here, and we need the note ID. You see, note ID. So look at what I'm doing. So you can just come over here and paste the note ID directly, but with Postman, you can just do this ID, and here's the ID. We just provide the value here. So if I come over to the notes and I copy the Epic AI note ID and paste it here, we will get an error. If I send this, cannot get note slash this route because we've not implemented the route. So if I come over here to our notes controller, I will say async find one, which will take the ID and return get. Nope. So this is a get request, and this is a param. We extract the parameter of the ID, and then we pass it to the find one. So we'll go. This means we'll go to slash note slash the note ID. So this is the reason why this get here is trying to tell us slash the note ID. So if you come over to Postman and do this once more, now we have our note. This is a single note and it's an object. So we have this note, created that, updated that, and so on. So we have Epic AI. If you go over and copy Epic Note ID and paste it here, now we have Epic Notes and no longer Epic AI. That's great. So now that we've implemented this route, let's go back to our note service. So the next route now will be to update our notes. Okay, so let's report update note, update note DTOTS, expect plus update note. This is note. Oh. Okay. Update note, create note detail. Okay, and TypeScript is happy. And if you come over here and say update note DTO, it should be imported. Great. Okay, thank you, Copilot. So let's review what Copilot has done for us. Cost note is equal to await Prisma note find unique ID. So first of all, find the note. So if the note doesn't exist, we throw not found exception. But we need also the user ID at current user ID, which is user ID, and it's of type string. We need an authenticated user to be able to update their note. Current user ID, this is a decorator, so we'll do like this. Great. So const note is equal to await this Prisma found where ID user ID like this. So if note throw new note found exception. But if there's a note, you see const update note is equal to await this Prisma note update where ID user ID, and then the data is update note DTO. So after updating it, we return the new updated note. So essentially, we can return. We don't know what the front end. If only we are working with the clients or the developers on the front end, we know that okay, this route we need an ID. This route we need so we can be able to reduce the queries that we make so as to make our queries faster, query optimization. But at this point, we don't know what they really want. So what we will do is just after updating, we send back the entire response. So if you come over to remove, which is delete, we need the user ID because it's an authenticated route. We will not allow you to go and delete another person's note. Like this, we must delete where it matches the user ID. So if the note is not there, we say, okay, not found, not found. Then we also delete where the user ID and the note ID. So we return the message, note deleted successfully. So let's come back to our notes controller. So we have two methods, update and remove. So in our notes controller, we need two routes. So the first route will be at patch. Thank you, Copilot. And the next one is, so the patch needs an ID. The delete also needs an ID. So let's import update note detail. User ID. Okay. Okay. No, okay. We just need the ID of the note and the remove here, the ID of the note as well. Okay, so let's go back to our user service. So we don't need to accept that, just the ID, user ID, current user ID. So if you look at the create, note controller, create. So this is where we need the ID actually. At current user ID, which is a user ID and it's of type string, like this. So now we can pass the user ID and send him here. We can pass the user ID. Great, because these are authenticated routes. So if we come to our node service, we no longer need this, but we need the user ID, which is of type string. over here, same thing. User ID and a note ID, just of type string. Okay, so up here we can then remove this. Great. So now we can be able to try to update a note and delete a note. So I guess we are still signed in if our cookie has not expired. So let's add a request. I will call this one update note. So let's quickly copy this, bring it over here, paste, change this to patch, and the ID of the note we want to update. So let's say we want to update, the Epic AI. So let's paste the ID here. So it's a patch request. Now we need to provide a body. So we'll say the title should be Epic Superb AI instead of Epic AI. So since it's a patch request, we can just go ahead and send. And now we have Epic Superb AI response 200. The request was okay. Now, if you come over to get on it, I will send this. If you take a look at the Epic AI now, we have Epic Superb AI instead of Epic AI. Great. So our endpoint is working. Now let's add another request. And let's call this one. Let's quickly post this. Nope. Delete note. Now let's come over here, copy this, bring it over here, paste. Now this one is delete. Delete doesn't need a body. So let's delete our Epic Superb AI note. Delete, bring the ID, paste the ID here, and we can make this request. Note deleted successfully. Now let's come over here to view all our notes. If I do this, we now have a single note. Our Epic Superb AI note is gone. Great. Wow. So this is awesome. This is awesome. This is awesome. So we've seen how we can do all of these things. With Nest.js, everything is well structured. We have our node service and we have our node controller, which is sweet. Now we have a current user ID, we have our param, and we have our body. See, the one sweet thing about Nest.js, we don't even have to stress ourselves doing things like, okay, const search is equal to new URL search params, params dot do this, params dot cause key of alarm, search append, or all those things. We want to come over and start destructuring. I don't know. Just this method, bring in this decorator ID, since it's the ID. But if you say ID and you come over here and say note ID, it will fail because it's expecting exactly an ID of ID in small letters. But if you say note ID, it will fail. So with Nest.js, we just at param ID, we're expecting an ID of a string. And if you provide a number, it will fail. Nest.js will fail and it's throw an error. You don't even need to handle that. We already have a current user ID on the session, which you can bring it here as a decorator. And once the user is authenticated, boom, boom, you are good to go. So we'll pass the user ID, the ID, and the update notes, the body we want to update. And we are good to go. So we can delete. We have an authenticated user, which is the current user ID. We have the param here, ID, which is the ID of the note. Now we can go ahead and pass the user ID and the ID. Wow, this is great. This is great. Okay. Now, in our notes, if you take a look at, we have not finished yet. We can come over here and we can use guards. Before anything, so use guards. And we say it is a session auth guard. But if we use it here, let's notice what happens. If I come over here and try to receive notes, okay, it still works, because we don't need a user ID. Okay. And moreover, it's like the user is still authenticated. So let's add a request, and let's call this one logout. And then we have add note, new request, copy this, bring it here, paste it, and change it to the post request. Change this one to log out. Now go ahead and send this. Successfully logged out. Now get all notes. Send this once more. Okay. You can still get our notes. Okay. Clear space. Okay, let's say we want to update a note. Send internet server error. User ID must not be null. Great. So if you come over to our node service, if user ID, we will show new unauthorized. Is it forbidden? Forbidden exception, like this. You do not have permission to update this note. Okay, so now let's come over here. Send this once more. You do not have permission to update this note. Error forbidden status code 403 because they are not authenticated. That's great. So we can do this here. Do this here. And here you do not have permission to delete this note. Great. And for the create, there's this here. You don't have permission to create a note because you are not authenticated. So we don't need to validate if the user ID matches the note ID because we are trying to grab the note by the ID and the user ID. So if it doesn't match, it will return nothing. It will return if it doesn't match here, it will return null, which will say not found. The same thing with delete. So if you use the ID and the user ID to get the note from the database and it doesn't match, it will return null. It's either a note or a null. So if it's null, this will evaluate to true and then we'll be able to throw no not found exception. So this is all the validation we need. That's great. And now we can go ahead and if you notice, the notes controller, I documented the first one, which is a create note, and left the other ones. So you can go ahead and document all these other ones as well. And if you notice the decorators, here we need a body to create a note, and it's a post request. Here is a get request. We need no body, but we need query because of the page, the limit, and the search. Here we need the get, and we are getting the note by its ID. So we need a the parameter. And here is a patch. We need to update a node by giving its ID. So it's a patch request, and we need a body to update it. And we also need the param, the ID, to actually get the note we want to update. And here, we just need the ID to delete the note. Okay, so delete note, we've not added. Okay, note controller, great. Great. So we've done that already. Okay. Now, we've updated our node service, node controller, and node module. So the next thing we want to do now is security implementation and middlewares. So to prepare our application for deployment in production. And before we even test, we're not going to be testing today. Before we test, we need to prepare our application for deployment in production before we can actually test. Okay, so we need to, with all this validation we are doing here and there, Next.js has a nice feature that we can do all of these things. So we can create, we already have a common folder, and we have the filters folder. We already created it when we were scaffolding our application. And in our filters folder, we can go ahead and create a file and call this file all exceptions filter.ts. And now what we want to do here is we need a decorator. We need at catch. And this one here, let's leave it empty. So we need to export a class, and this class we call it all exceptions filter. Say export class, and we'll call this one all exceptions filter. So with this, we need to implement the exception filter. You say implement exception filter, which is coming from Next.js command. And in here, we need a private property. We call this one private read only. So we see it's a logger that logs exceptions. So we see new logger. This logger is coming from Next.js common. Logger is equal to new logger like this. Great. And now we have a catch method. Okay, Copilot, let's see what we got. So we have a catch method. Okay, error, this error says uncalled error type value. Okay, our exceptions filter.name. Great. Exception is unknown. The host is argument host. Here we have void. It returns nothing. So let's make that explicit. So context CTX is equal to host.switch to HTTP. So let's see. Argument host, which is coming from Next.js common. Okay. Host.switch to HTTP. Const response is equal to context get response. Okay, context get response. Let's make this explicit. The response, yes, but it should be coming from Express, not just a response in TypeScript. Let's get it from Express like this. Okay, and now we say get request. The status is let's add another to make TypeScript. Okay, So let's say let status is a number, and with the message, let message, which is a string or an object like this. So we add an if statement, say if exception is an instance, if exception, Copilot, thank you, let's see what we've got. If exception is an instance of HTTP exception, so now we say status is equal to exception, get status, HTTP extension, which is coming from next common. Status is equal to HTTP get status, message is equal to exception get response. Okay, so let's do a trick here. We say const exception of exception response is equal to exception okay. Let's delete this file. Sorry about that. The reason why I'm deleting it is not because we will not do it. We will do it. But I guess we should focus on some more important things right now. So let's move over to our main TS file. We'll come back to that file and implement all of those. But let's first of all move over to our main TS. So if you can see, we have the session coming from Express session, which is not, it's not advisable to use this in production. So we create a class in our main TS file, and then we'll call this one SQLite store. That is, I will say constructor, we say private Prisma, consists of type any, like this. So we have a method of get session. Okay, let's say we have a method here. We have the get method. We have the set method, because yeah, these are, we have set, get, and we have the destroy, which we can destroy session. Destroy like this. So first off, the first method we need to implement is the get method. So here we say it's the, let's say SID, so that we know it's the session ID. So this will return a promise, and the promise will resolve to any. So we have a try. Like, so Prisma, you can see Prisma. Prisma said, okay, let's leave it as any for now. So we have a try catch. Let's move this try catch to the get method. So the first thing we want to do here is in the try is we say const session is equal to await this Prisma session find unique, where ID session ID. So we say if If session, if there's no session, or session dot expires at is less than new date, we return null. Return null. Else, we'll say return JC pass session data. So in the catch here, we say return null. But if you take a look at our Prisma schema, we do not have a session model in our schema. We say model session. Now we want to start storing sessions in our database. So it is more safer in production. Let's say we want to be able to store sessions in our database so that a user can be able to log out of other devices and all of those things. So what we need here is the ID. We need the session ID, the SID, which is of type string, the data string, expired at date time. So we don't need this. Wait. So we can say at index session ID. Great. Now we can come over here, stop our server, and say npx prisma db push. And then it will be in sync with our database. Great. So now we can come back to our main TLs. Now we have a session. But because of Prisma, if we have, look at our app module, we have our Prisma module. So here we see Prisma service. Prisma service. Instructor private Prisma service. Expires at okay. Please our schema again. Expires at date time. Date time. Okay. So let's look at our main tiers. So what is this saying? So type value, this Prisma session, this Prisma session dot find unique session ID. So I don't know what's happening here. Okay. If there's no session, the session expired is less than new date, return null. If we return JSON pass session data. Error. Just log the error to the console. Yeah. Okay. Value of type any. promise which will resolve to a string. Okay. What other error? So unsafe argument of type error, type assigned to string or null. So this one is happy now. Unsafe member access expires at. Wow. So this is strange. This find unique is ID. Okay. So I guess the problem here is let's do away with this. I'll make this at unique and do this once more. npx prisma dd push. Yes, do that for us. And we come over here. Okay. So I don't know why we are out of time already, and there's no time to debug. The Nest.js strict mode is what I don't like. Okay, so we can do away with all of this and leave this so that we know that in our next class we will be able to complete the SQLite store and our app will be ready for production. So if we still have time, we'll be able to deploy it to render by next week. Sorry, in our next class, not next week actually. Yeah. So we take the session out of our server and we move it to the database. Yeah, something like that. So we've come to the end of this class, and in our next class we complete the SQLite store and be able to do other things. So if you have any questions, you can go ahead and ask.
Okay, I just want to say something, but maybe when you stop the recording.
Oh, okay. A minute, please.